Hi everyone, this is Jay Clark over here at F1TheBox. Going to be showing off our Formula One database version B today, and just running through the features, showing you what this database is capable of. The first thing that you're going to see is the security warning. The macros have been disabled. For this whole process to work and this whole database to work properly, we are going to have to enable this content. So we're going to hit enable. Then the first thing that's going to pop up is the welcome screen. So this is going to show, welcome to the Formula One database. If this is your first time, read the help page within, as well as go to the manual, which is going to be online, as well as this video. So I'm guessing that's one of the ways that you found this video. So be sure to watch this video through its entirety, as well as read the manual before you really dive in. It's a simple database at this point. As we start to build on and add more content to it, it will get more complex. So it's important that you follow along with some of this as we go. And we will be updating the manuals as well as each version update as we go to showcase the new features. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Once you hit OK, it'll bring you to the dashboard. So that's what this is. This is pretty much the home page for the entire database. So this is going to show off, all the features that we have right now. We have log data, search the data. We're not going to worry about the telemetry apps. The help page, so that's where you can go have some brief explanations there. S setup. Add S setup, add G setup, view both of those setups, and then the change log. Now we're going to walk through these as we go. So let's start with the main workhorse, which is going to be the log data section. So we pop into here, and this is actually what you'll be utilizing throughout your different sessions that you're going to be racing on. So really, so this is already populated, but we're going to go ahead and delete all this out. You can copyright over this, or you can hit the delete key, and it'll delete those pieces of information. So track or circuit, we're going to choose, let's just say Brazil again. The team, we're going to choose Ferrari. Driver, now if you're doing anything else but a time trial, the time trials are the one thing that's going to, in the game, it doesn't allow you to pick a driver. So here, it'll allow you to pick a driver, but what'll happen is in the back end, it'll change it to NA if the race type is time trial. So we'll choose Charles. Race type, I will keep it with time trial, so that way we can see that happening. The date, we're just going to leave it as 10/1. The time, we're going to leave it, it's 3:43. So we're actually going to put 15:43. So it does have to be in 24-hour format for this to work. So just be sure that you keep, and it's local time. It's not a certain time zone. It's your own local time. Because that way, this database is being used by you on your machine, so that's what it's used for. Weather, we're going to go dry and wet is primarily for the time trials. All the other is for the different race types that you can do. So we're just going to go dry. League, we're going to leave it F1. We will be incorporating F2, both 2018 and 2019, into this database at some point in a later update. But for this first revision, first update, whatever you want to call it, we're going to stay with F1. Laps. So laps are the total laps that you've ran this particular setup on. It is not required. You can put nothing there, you can put 0, you can put 10, you can put 100. I recommend actually putting on there how many laps you put this on. If you forget, it's not a big deal, just guess. But to really drive accuracy, you'll want to fill it out. So let's say that we ran, the setup that we haven't filled in yet, 10 laps. S setup and G setup, I'll explain those in a little bit, but for right now we're going to put 1 and 1, and like I said, we'll come back to that. Now you'll see in our documentation that we talk about blue line in the data logging section, and that's what this is this blue line. Everything above and everything below So we just entered everything above the blue line, and now we're going to enter everything below the blue line. Yes, everything else in this whole thing is blue, but that is what, or at least a shade of blue, but that's what we're going to go by, is that line right there. Fuel, so fuel loading, time trial, we don't have an option, so you can just leave that blank. Aerodynamics, we have the front and rear wing settings that you can put in here, the transmission, suspension geometry, regular suspension, brakes, tires, comment, and lap times. So I'm going to actually populate this with one of my past sessions that I have. Okay, so we've entered all that data in, and now we're going to leave the tire type alone. We're going to come down to the comment. Now the comment section, you can write as much as you want in here. There's no character max or anything. You can write whatever you want. Really what this is designed to do is to make a comment on, what part of this session was useful, what wasn't. Did you find something in a turn? Did you feel something in a turn? Those sorts of things, so that's what this is for. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put some information and give you an example. So, what I had for this specific session was I need to turn into turn 2 more, turn 6, 8, 9, and 11, all like gear 6 into the turn 6, and 11, like 4th gear out of the turn, and so on and so forth. So that way you can actually, when you pull up this setup, you can actually see these comments and understand, what happened during a particular session. So I find that really, really helpful to have that. Now, the top 5 lap times in time trial. There's usually the 5 best laps that you've done, and so that's what I've copied here. Now, you need to put a minimum of 1, but really the maximum is you can add however many data points you want. So we could come in here and fill in all 5 lap times, log the data, erase these 5 lap times, keep everything the same, and add another 5, and so on and so forth. And pretty much what happens is every lap time, it takes a snapshot of all of this data, and it puts it into another spreadsheet as a line, and then it says this was the lap time for that one, and then it goes to the next one and says, oh, I'm going to take all this again, and then we're all of this, and then I'm going to put that as the lap time, and so on and so forth. So for instance here, we're going to put a lap time of 1 minute 35.804. And I've set it up for minutes, seconds, dot, milliseconds. So that's how these are separated. We're actually just going to put, there we go. We're just going to change that a little bit. So now this is one session. So I'm ready to log this data, and like I said, you can put as many as you want, but you need to put at least 1 lap time in to log this. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So we're gonna hit log data. It is going to warn you, saying that any information left blank will automatically be filled in by NA. Is that okay? So like fuel load is blank, tire is blank. So it's gonna take that and it's gonna put NA in it. So we're going to hit yes, that is fine, and it did that. It also changed the driver, so we're going to hit OK. So it also changed the driver. The reason being is the race type is set to time trial, and you cannot select a driver. You can only select team. So that's why that turned to NA. And you can see, again, fuel load and tire type changed as well. So that's really the basic to this side. I guess the last thing here is clear data. It'll clear everything under this blue line, including the lap times. It will prompt you and ask, would you like to clear all the data below the blue line? Yes. And then it'll clear it for you. The reason I have it prompt is because if all of a sudden you meant to hit the dashboard and you fat moused it to the clear data, it warns you, because I know that's a lot of data, and you don't want to keep entering all those in. If you accidentally cleared it, it can be frustrating. This information, you just have to come up and click delete or backspace to change it. So yes, that is the data logging section of it. So now we've logged an entry. We're going to go back to the dashboard. Then we're going to go to the second one here called search. So we're going to search the data logs. So I already have Brazil in here. So what this should do is I believe this will bring up 3 different entries. So I'm going to hit search. And there we go. It's 3 different entries that we've done at Brazil. And here is where you enter your different things. So Brazil, that's what it sorted out of Brazil. Team, we have Williams and Ferrari. Driver, didn't put anything, so it doesn't have anything. We didn't put anything in team, so it didn't bring anything. Time trial, didn't put anything. These are the only things that I have at Brazil are time trials. If I had a Grand Prix would have been in here, and so on and so forth. And then I put your lap times here. And then I put your lap times here so that you can see them up front. One of the things that we don't have in this version is a more friendly way of viewing the setups. That is coming. It is coming. I partly coded it. Haven't really finished it, but that is coming. I wanted to get this out so that you guys can start using it and go from there. Now, where these come from, the Arrow 1, Arrow 2, Trans, Geo, Sus, Brake, and Tire. Brake and Tire, pretty straightforward. But if we go back to Dashboard and we go back to Log Data, so that's the headers of these different sections. So fuel is fuel, Arrow is aerodynamics, Trans is trans, Geo is suspension geometry, Sus is suspension, brakes, and tires. And then it just follows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 1, 2. So Arrow 1 is here, Arrow 2 is there. So Arrow 1 is the front wing, Arrow 2 is the rear wing. So if you go back to the search, that's what these mean. Now, again, we are going to be doing a more user-friendly version of this, so that way you can select it and bring it into a user-friendly, or you could select multiples and potentially run a report and compare them in the works. And that's what we'll have for later updates. So that's pretty much the data logging and the search. If you go and let's say we want to get rid of this and we want to just do the team, it's going to be Ferrari, and we hit search, it'll just bring Ferrari, all the ones for Ferrari. So if we would have had one for Monaco or one for China, it would have brought those in, but we only have Ferrari for Brazil. So, and then it'll automatically clear the results and repopulate. Now, if you are OCD like myself and like to leave things neat and clean when you're done, you hit clear results and it just clears it. It does not clear any of this data, unfortunately. League, keep it at F1. We will be, and you'll see that back in the data logging. You'll see that the league is F1. We have not created F2 yet, so leave it at F1. And the software should fix it if you put something different in there. So S setup and G setup. So you see that in the data logging. S setup is the steering wheel setup. So it's the actual settings within the steering wheel that you input for force feedback, ABS, shock, all that, drift mode, all those fun things. And G setup is the gaming setup. So what you actually put into the gaming, into the actual Codemasters game for the settings. Where these really came from, specifically the steering wheel setup, was in the earlier time of owning my Fanatec wheel. I went and I updated the firmware. Well, unbeknownst to me, it wiped all the settings within the steering wheel. So I had to try and remember, and I think luckily I wrote it down in a notebook somewhere to go back to it. So what I've done here is if you add a setup, you can actually import that, not import, but you can actually enter that data here and house it within this software, so that way you can call upon it later. And you can also attach it to a specific session run as well. So these are just right off of the Fanatec manual. So you have sensitivity, force feedback, shock, ABS, drift mode, force, spring, damper, and force effective intensity. So you can just enter those in. For instance, I don't think I have, let me see if I have one that I can import. No, I don't have one yet from the other side. I have one in here, I just don't have it as a reference. But what we can do is we can just put, I think this one is actually off. For instance, or whatever. So what we can do here is we can add this setup. Add the setup. Setup was added successfully. Perfect. Again, if you're OCD, you can hit clear input and it'll clear all these. Or if you want to leave them there for the next time, it doesn't really matter. But where did that setup go? We go back to the dashboard and we hit View S Setups. And there they are. Here's one that we put in earlier on September. Here's one that we put on the 6th. This is just where it houses it. So now you can come back and say, oh, I wonder what I did on this date because I like that setting better. And that's where it's at. So you can call on it whenever you want. This setup ID. Now this is what you enter into the data logging side of things. So whereas entering 1, that would theoretically reference this. Whereas referencing 2, it would be this. It's important to reference them if you can. That way, for later updates, they will pull that information and plop it into a nice spot for you. This is kind of the only spot that I have right now for you to view it, is just the data side of things. So if we go to back, so theoretically, if we're going to do a session, okay, it's setup ID 1, dashboard, setup ID 1. And, if it was 2, then you put 2 here. There will probably be some updates around that later on down the road, but for now, that is how it works. So we go back to the, so we can go to the add G setup. So I added the game setup, and here's all the definitions of all of these up here. So SD is steering dead zone, TD is throttle dead zone, BD is brake dead zone, and so on and so forth. Now these are word for word from the Codemasters game. So it's also a nice reference to understand what those different ones mean as well. But this is where you enter them in, and then you hit add setup, and then what happens is it goes to the view G setups, goes there, and it gets entered here. And then that's your G setup ID. So this just helps so that way, this data doesn't get changed. But if you're a person that likes to change your settings from circuit to circuit, or need to call on it for whatever reason down the road, this is where you can put that information. And like for me, I won't have a lot of G setups, and I probably won't have a lot. I might have a lot of S setups. It kind of depends. As I develop more of my racing, because I know there are people that do change this per circuit. So that's what it's here for that reason. Like I said, telemetry app we don't worry about right now. That's coming down the road. The help page. So this is where you can go and you can understand some of the very basics of each section. You can also go to the manual here. Make sure that each version that you download, you look at this help section and see where the manual is located at, because I will be updating the manuals per each release. That way it shows the new features, shows what we took away, if we take anything away. That way everything's up to date. And if you'd love to throw us some money, there's our PayPal as well. Would definitely appreciate it to keep bringing you guys this cool stuff. So we'll go back to the dashboard and the change log. So the last one here is the change log, and this really dives into what we've changed from version to version. Each version that you guys will see is a solid letter with no numbers after it. What I do in the background is I sometimes change as I'm going through my revision process. I have multiple copies, so I actually have an A0, an A1, and an A2 copy on my desktop. That, you know, the A2 copy has these, but the A0 has none of these. Just a way that I've developed over the years of tracking my own revisions internally. But that's what this B revision will have, all of these. So anything above it, this will have. So that's just one way that the revisions, the versioning or the changelog works. And that's where I will be putting a lot of my information. So with that, that is the basics of the system. The database is covered by Creative Commons, so you are free to change, share as much as you want, and reproduce it. Just give us the kudos. And with that, thanks everyone for watching. I'll be diving into the back end of this database in another video, so be on the lookout for that if you're interested in how the coding actually works. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here for more content, as well as follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for watching.